Picture this. You're sitting in a beautiful apartment overlooking the lake, the kind of place your younger self would have dreamt about. You've worked really hard and you've built a career doing what you love. And from the outside, it looks like you've made it. But there's this quiet, uncomfortable truth sitting next to you. Something feels off. Not in an obvious way, but you don't feel how you thought you would. You're already thinking about the next thing. The reason might be because the life you are striving for is a lie. I'm Dr. Abbie, a behavioral scientist, keynote speaker, and author. I use my background in psychology and my experience training elite professionals around the world, including the US Secret Service, FBI, Interpol, and Fortune 500 companies, to help you understand people, make better decisions, and take control of building the life you want. In this episode, I want to share 3 truths about the high life, what it does to your mind and your emotions and your relationships, and what it actually takes to feel fulfilled. In my early 20s, I had this desire to look like I had more than I did. I thought that if I could just reach a certain image, the clothes and money and lifestyle, I would feel content. So I chased that. And a few years later, after having moved from Northampton, England to Orlando, Florida, I was living alone in this beautiful apartment, doing work I once dreamt of, and I had achieved every goal that I had set out for myself. But I wasn't happy. I was already chasing the next level, the bigger home, the next achievement, the next evidence that I had made it. I wasn't satisfied, and I realized that it didn't matter what superficial thing I built. They weren't going to make me genuinely happy. I had bought into the idea of the high life, the glamour and VIP parties and fancy cars and expensive restaurants every night, designer bags, and this illusion of having it all. But the truth is, that image, it's a smoke screen. You spend so much time trying to reach it and maintain it and to look like you've made it, that by the time you get there, you realize it's not what you thought. We now know from countless studies that people who build their lives around external validation and fame or wealth report significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Research on what's called hedonic adaptation shows that no matter how high you climb, the brain adapts to that level of pleasure and resets the bar. You get used to it. So you need more and more. And it's a cycle that you keep chasing the next hit of excitement and you never arrive at peace. And this episode isn't about money being bad or success being wrong. It's about the truth behind what we call the high life. Because whilst it might look like freedom from the outside, inside it can become another kind of trap. So let's get to truth number 1. Truth number 1 is that dopamine lies to you. Here's the thing about our brains. They're wired to love the pursuit of something more than actually having it. Every time you get close to a goal, that job offer, that purchase, that like on social media, your brain releases dopamine. But dopamine isn't released when you get the reward. It's released in anticipation of it. It's about the chase. So when you finally get the thing you have been chasing, that raise or the bigger car or the bigger home, that high actually fades. And psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. The research shows that no matter what we achieve, our brains quickly adapt to this new normal. You find it harder to feel satisfied with where you are. That's why people who keep hitting big milestones often feel strangely flat afterwards. They expect the moment to feel life-changing, but it rarely does. And I've had this so many times in my career that if I can just get this next keynote or award or achievement, then I will finally feel successful. But every time I've achieved it, I'm excited for a moment, and then I feel small and flat again because I've already moved the goalpost. And that's why the influencer with the seemingly perfect life can feel empty behind the scenes. Their brain has been overstimulated by constant novelty and validation, and it leaves them chasing the next hit instead of just enjoying what's in front of them. Truth 2. You're chasing someone else's illusion. Let's be honest, the version of the high life we see online is very rarely real. These come and spend a day with me videos showing luxury apartments and endless shopping sprees, they're usually just a highlight reel, clips pulled from different days or even different weeks or months, and then they're stitched together to make it look like a single day. And a lot of what you see isn't even owned or real, it's rented for photo shoots. There are studios where you can pay to take photos in a private jet. Even in fitness, people are using performance-enhancing drugs and fake weights and then making it look like their results come from hard training, and then they're selling you plans that they don't even follow themselves. So when you find yourself comparing your real life to that kind of staged perfection, remember, their lives don't even look like that. And the irony is that even the people creating that illusion are exhausted. It takes a huge amount of pressure and emotional energy to keep up a version of yourself that always looks happy and rich and successful. And your life becomes about performing and putting on a show rather than actually living it. And the more someone curates a perfect identity online, the more psychological strain they tend to report. Maintaining a flawless public image is linked to higher anxiety and burnout and emotional exhaustion. And studies have even shown that the gap between your online version of yourself and your real internal experience becomes one of the strongest predictors of distress. The larger the gap, the more likely someone is to report symptoms of depression, low self-worth, and emotional fatigue. Influencers who rely on their identity for income experience this even more intensely because their livelihood depends on keeping the illusion going. So while you sit on the outside believing that these people are living the dream, many of them are quietly overwhelmed and so far from happy. Your life becomes something that you manage instead of something that you live. Truth 3. The high life breeds lonely relationship. The way you present yourself shapes who comes towards you. When you lead with the watch and the car and the money or the yacht, you attract people who are looking for those things. When you build your identity around being the life of the party, always out and always on, you attract people chasing those surface level highs. And then we're surprised when the relationships that form around us feel shallow. And we say things like, oh, everyone only wants this from me, or no one really sees me. But we've taught people what to value in us. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't good people in these circles. There absolutely are. But when your image becomes the filter through which others find you, you'll get more people who are drawn to that image rather than the person. Psychologists call these instrumental relationships. These are connections based on what you can offer rather than who you actually are. Decades of research, including the Harvard study of adult development, have shown that the biggest predictor of happiness and longevity isn't money, isn't fame or success. It's the quality of your relationships. It's the people you can be fully yourself with. Because when your worth is tied to what you can provide, love starts to feel like a transaction. And even when you're surrounded by people, you can feel completely alone. I spent years in those circles. And over time, my view of relationships became very narrow and skeptical. You start to question people's intentions and you become very guarded. When I stepped away from those environments and I stopped caring about what my life looked like, and I just focused on how it felt to live it, the people who were drawn to the performance, they naturally faded out. And I had outgrown those shallow relationships. I ended up finding myself gravitating towards peaceful people. And the relationships I have now have shown me that so many people can love you for your heart and your integrity and your presence, and they don't care about what you provide. But when you're in those fake high-performing circles, even the idea of a genuine connection feels suspicious. once you leave them, you realize how warped that reality is. What I want you to take away from this is this: the life that looks impressive is not always the life that feels right. We live in a culture that has trained us to see achievement as identity and pleasure as happiness and attention as worth. When you grow up in that world, it's so easy to believe that the good life is something you chase. But the good life is something you build. It's internal, it's not external. The moment you stop chasing what looks impressive and you start choosing what feels honest to you, everything will change. And there is a quote that I love that says, once you've seen what people cheer for, you stop caring when they boo. Because success is not about looking impressive. It's about feeling grounded and connected and at home in your own life. That's the real good life. If today's episode challenged the way you think, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. So until then, keep challenging conventional thinking. I'm Dr. Abbie, and I'll see you next time.